here with Bishop Conley. This Sunday is Pope Francis's World Day of the Poor, and we're at Catholic Social Services handing out Thanksgiving baskets to those in need. So I was just curious if Bishop, if you could give a few thoughts on World Day of the Poor coming up this Sunday, November 19th.
Absolutely. I just kind of wrote a column for the Southern Nebraska Register that's published today on the 17th on my experience down in Mexico City on a mission trip with Hope for the Poor. And as I mentioned in the column, you know, Mother Teresa, who's one of our greatest icons of service to the poor in our own generation, our own lifetime. I had the privilege of meeting her several times. You know, those 5 words from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, the story of the separation of the sheep and the goats. And as long as you did it to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. And she said those 5 words, you did it unto me. And that was really important for her, that, you know, we should never allow the poor to be separated from us. In other words, we should never separate ourselves from the poor. That's dangerous, because we should always be mindful of the poor. We look throughout the history of Scripture, way back into the Old Testament, and obviously Jesus, at the heart of his ministry was the poor, and he lived and associated with the poor. So that tells us something. And it's so easy for us in our modern society to isolate ourselves from the poor, not to look at them, not to be around them, not to have contact with them. And that's dangerous for our own souls, because then we become too comfortable and complacent in our own kind of comfortable setting. And so not only should we comfort the afflicted, but we should afflict the comfortable. In other words, we should be afflicted out of our comfort, to go out of our comfort zones, and as Pope Francis would say, to kind of have the smell of the sheep on us, to be with the sheep in the streets. And that was the whole beautiful experience down in Mexico City, is really being on the streets with the poor. And Mother Teresa links it to the Eucharist, that if we can see the face of Jesus in the sacred host under the appearances of bread and wine, he's there. We have to have the faith to see him. Well, then we'll be able to more easily see him in the face of the poor under the distressing disguise of poverty. That Christ's presence is truly there, and that link between the Eucharist and the poor is really very essential. So Pope Francis on this World Day of the Poor is reminding us of that gospel mandate, that as long as you did it to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. In other words, whenever we reach out to the poor, even a conversation, and also obviously assistance and aid, then we are doing that to Jesus. We are responding like in the gospel by serving Jesus and the poor.